Tonight on KPBS Evening Edition, a Border Patrol agent is involved in a deadly shooting in Chula Vista. And an animal rights group says a killer whale was injured by another orca at SeaWorld. They filed a complaint with a federal agency.
And while San Diego's Superior Court suffers from closures and severe cutbacks, judges continue to get nearly $1 million a year for lavish car allowances. We'll explain why their pricey perk may be protected. Then we'll talk with local leaders in our arts community about how the new mayor could improve culture in San Diego.
And we talk with actor George Takei about his legacy project, Allegiance, now playing at the Old Globe Theater. KPBS Evening Edition starts now.
KPBS Evening Edition is made possible by Joan and Irwin Jacobs and by
Hello, good evening. Thanks for joining us. I'm Dwayne Brown. Police say a Border Patrol agent shot a woman to death after she rammed him with her car. It happened today in a commercial area of Chula Vista. The agent was working with undercover officers to serve a felony arrest warrant. That's when the woman was not the subject of the warrant, but police say she was. She ran into the agent, sending him onto the hood of her car. He opened fire, killing the woman after riding a few hundred yards on the hood. The agent was taken to the hospital. No word tonight on his condition. A wounded San Diego Sheriff's deputy is home tonight, 3 days after being shot in Lakeside. Sergeant Craig Johnson was hit in a shootout with a suspected child molester. A second deputy was also shot. Detective Ali Perez is in critical condition. Suspect Daniel Witsack is also in the hospital, charged with 3 counts of attempted murder. He may face more charges when the district attorney's office completes its investigation. New court documents tonight about a San Diego native accused of killing a dozen people in a Colorado movie theater. James Holmes was barred from the University of Colorado before the shootings for threatening a professor. The documents also show a psychiatrist has been added to his defense team. His lawyers have said he's mentally ill. New claims of sexual abuse in the military. They come in a lawsuit filed in San Francisco federal court by women who say they were harassed, raped, or assaulted. They say they suffered retaliation when they reported the crimes. The suit accused top Defense Department officials of failing to prosecute and properly investigate the claims. The animal rights group PETA has filed another complaint against SeaWorld San Diego because of an injury to a killer whale. SeaWorld says the orca named Nakai was performing with other whales when he hit something in the pool, injuring his lower jaw. PETA has released a photo. We want to warn you, it's graphic. The group claims it shows Nakai's injury. PETA claims the orca was attacked by 2 other killer whales. Their complaint has gone to the U.S. Department of Agriculture. In response, park officials released a statement saying there is no organization in the world more committed to the physical, social, and mental welfare of its animals than SeaWorld. There's been an unexpected turn in our ongoing story about a campaign for a sports complex at the 10th Avenue Marine Terminal. Our investigations desk has been looking into an email from John Lynch, the CEO of UT San Diego. The paper is pushing for the complex. The email said progress was made with a mayoral candidate. We have an update now from iNewsSource reporter Brad Racino. What happened today, Brad?
Well, Dwayne, a few weeks back, we had put in a California Public Records Act request to Councilman Carl DeMaio's office for any and all communications between Mr. DeMaio, John Lynch, and Doug Manchester. This was all regarding an email we'd obtained in which Lynch claims to have made progress with one of the mayoral candidates regarding his waterfront stadium plan. This morning, we got a response from DeMaio's office.
And what was the response?
The chief of staff for DeMaio's office said there's been absolutely no communication between the councilman and either Lynch or Manchester.
Communication meaning?
Meaning emails, faxes, letters, text messages, voicemails, everything. Apparently there's been nothing.
And we'll, of course, keep this story updated on kpbs.org. Brad Racino from our media partner, Investigative News Source. Summer is barely behind us, and preparation for flu season is already underway in San Diego. Influenza contributes to the death of about 36,000 people a year nationwide. That's why health professionals encourage almost everyone 6 months and older to get a flu shot.
You're diabetic? Okay. You ever had the flu shot before?
Every year.
And you do okay with that? Okay.
Severa Hardy is the coordinator with the San Diego Black Nurses Association. She's preparing to give 74-year-old Rose Ignat her annual flu shot in southeast San Diego.
And her name is Rose, too. Yes.
Hardy is an RN with 51 years of experience and really knows how to put people at ease when even giving the dreaded flu shot.
Do they live here?
Well, yes. As a matter of fact, my grandson is with me.
And how old is he?
6.
Does he get his flu shot?
I think so. I don't think he can.
Why not?
I'm not telling.
Yeah.
The Black Nurses Association has been putting on this free clinic at the M.L. King Rec Center for 8 years now.
And mainly we wanted to do it for the seniors, but everyone was welcome.
This year's vaccine comes from county reserves and will protect against 3 strains of influenza, including H1N1 or swine flu. That virus got its start in San Diego and Imperial counties in 2009 and 2010, killing 58 people and eventually spreading worldwide.
The people got very excited, so they were everywhere to get the shot. So we couldn't keep enough vaccine on hand, you know, and when we had it here, we had over 400 people.
Things have quieted down since then, and vaccines are more widely available, but vaccination is still important for adults 65 and over, children, pregnant women, and people with asthma, diabetes, and lung disease.
You get about 36,000 people that die a year from the flu. So in those, they're mostly seniors, babies, and the chronically ill.
In addition to getting a flu shot, other precautions to protect yourself include washing hands thoroughly, staying away from sick people, and avoiding touching eyes, nose, and mouth. And Hardy says don't believe those myths about getting a flu shot.
And then the big myth is when people get the flu shot, they think they swear they got the flu from the shot. But they don't, because it is a dead virus, so you can't get anything from anything that's dead.
The San Diego Black Nurses Association is offering 9 more flu clinics. You can find out when and where on their website at sdblacknurses.org. Despite severe cutbacks in services at San Diego Superior Court, judges will still receive lavish car allowances. Peggy Pico explains why the pricey perk may be protected.
Governor Jerry Brown's recently revised budget left an $11 million deficit in the San Diego Superior Court system, resulting in 7 court closures and hundreds of lost jobs. But as my guest, Dave Moss of San Diego City Beat, first discovered, the judges' lavish car allowances are still intact. Dave, you broke this story earlier this week. How much money are we talking about? What is a judge's car allowance?
Well, a regular Superior Court judge gets about $575 a month for a car allowance. That's more than $6,000 a year. If you're a supervising judge or presiding judge, you get $675 per month.
But spread out over all of the judges and administrators here in San Diego, how much does that work out to a year?
Over the 126 judges and 9 administrators, it comes to more than $960,000 a year. So close to $1 million that we're paying out in car allowances.
How did this perk come about?
It actually dates back more than 20 years, and when the county actually paid for the court. The county tied, judges' compensation and benefits to what county supervisors were getting. The county has since separated from the court. The state pays for it all, but yet they've kept these benefits.
Are other county court systems, do they have allowances similar to this one?
I called the 12 largest counties, and of the 12, other than San Diego, 2 of them had these allowances. San Bernardino County has been phasing them out, and then Contra Costa County actually does give a car allowance, but it's about half of what our judges get.
Ours is the highest in the state, I read in your article.
It's the highest of the 12.
Okay. What do the judges say about keeping this allowance in light of all of these budget cuts and closes to courthouses up in North County? Did they answer you about it?
Well, it's funny because the judges were so very vocal about how painful these cuts were, how devastating these cuts were. They were, they came on this show and talked about it. But when you try to get them on the phone to talk about their own compensation, their own allowances, silence. I couldn't get the chief executive on the phone. I couldn't get the Superior Court presiding judge on the phone. The executive officer did talk to the UT, I believe yesterday or the day before, and he said, well, we haven't reached that point yet. Main Street might not sell well with Main Street, but we just don't feel we've reached that point yet in the cuts.
Explain to folks how these allowances are set and who sets the difference between the judge's salary and things like this?
Well, their salary, which is about $178,000 a year, is set in the Constitution of California, and the number of judges is controlled by the legislature. Now, as far as how this money gets doled
meaning,
out,
before we go on, meaning their jobs and their salaries are protected.
Exactly,
so that's not going anywhere.
Right. And, you know, this car allowance was set, 20 years ago or so, or 10 years ago, I think. But as far as their budget overall goes, that money gets given to them from the administrative office of the courts, and then that goes to the Superior Court, and then the judges decide how to spend it. There's like 2 committees just made up of judges who decide how everything is going to get cut, how everything is going to get spent.
Essentially setting their own car allowance budget.
Or refusing to cut it, yeah.
Okay. What about other lawyers here in town and legal associations? Were they willing to talk to you about this?
A lot of the lawyer groups that I spoke to were very reluctant to say anything. And a lot of the lawyers I called did not want to be on the record having an opinion on it. A few did. But the problem is that a lot of these people are going to have to come before the court. And they don't want to be in front of a judge who is looking at it and saying, well, this person tried to take $6,000 away from me a year or $8,000 away from me a year. So they were really, really reluctant to say anything, even though they've decried the cuts overall.
We had a listener respond to your report that said this is sort of a non-issue. I mean, this is something that could attract better judges to the bench, and we shouldn't worry about it.
People say that about all levels of things, whether you were talking about soldiers, soldiers getting attracted to, private security groups or, not being able to attract good city council members. But ultimately, people don't become judges because they want to make a lot of money. They become judges for the prestige, because they feel they're drawn to community service or, serving in civic society, some to the power, I guess. But I don't think that's really a consideration, because what some of these, lawyers are making in the private field, there's no way taxpayers could ever afford it.
All right. What, if anything, can there be done about these allowances? Will there be public pressure?
Well, there's a few hearings coming up. You can go to the Superior Court website and look at the hearings as they're discussing closing the South County and the East County courthouses. So you could go and kick up a fuss there. Beyond that, these are not particularly open budget hearings as they go forward in the next couple of years. So I don't know, write letters, talk to your legislators. It's very limited because it is a separate branch of the government.
Well, I'm sure you'll be following up on this, as will we. So San Diego City Beat reporter Dave Moss, thanks so much for talking with us.
Oh, thank you.
In our election series on what a new mayor could do to improve San Diego, Peggy Pico talked earlier this week with arts and cultural leaders about what they'd like to see change.
We've asked San Diego business leaders and environmentalists which issues they'd like to see the new mayor and his administration tackle. Now we continue our nonpartisan discussion with a focus on local arts and culture with President and CEO of San Diego Youth Symphony and Conservatory, Delug Smith, and David Malmuth, a real estate developer whose proposed Idea District aims to unite San Diego artists and innovators in a downtown development. Welcome you both to Evening Edition. I'm so glad you're here.
Thank you.
Delug, name a project that you would like to see the new city administration deal with.
Well, I'm going to save David the embarrassment of talking about his own project and say the new mayor should look at the Idea District, not just because the Idea District will be important for downtown, it'll be important for bringing together creative people and creative technologies, but also because there's so many implications for what choices are made there that can be parlayed into other areas of the city. It can really be a laboratory, as David says, for what else can be achieved in other neighborhoods to make San Diego the most creative city in the country.
And David, outside of your project, what would you like to see the new city administration tackle?
Well, I think the Centennial Celebration 2015 offers an extraordinary opportunity to heighten the discussion about arts and culture and the role that it plays in creating a great city. And so my hope is that the mayor seizes the moment and brings the entire community, the business community, the arts community together around putting on a fantastic celebration of the Centennial.
How do you think, Delug, how do you think the city administration right now is, how do they stand as far as when it comes to arts and culture?
Well, we've had a fantastic mayor in Mayor Sanders supporting arts and culture. He's personally issued the annual economic impact report. We've got a great leader at the Commission for Arts and Culture. It's an organization. The city does a lot to bring together the arts and culture community and create opportunities for us to collaborate, but also helps us make relationships in neighborhoods and reach people and families and students that we might not be able to reach otherwise unless we are going into their neighborhoods.
David, you have talked about integrating art, this integrative art. Explain what that is.
Well, my take is that we are in a race for talent, and it's an international race. And the young, highly educated, creative person wants to be around other young, highly educated, creative people. And we need to create the places, the spaces in San Diego that become magnets for that kind of talent. And we know that arts and culture is one of the things that is, in fact, a magnet. So what I'm hoping for, and we're trying to manifest in an idea district, but as DeLuke says, it can happen broadly, is that we create this rich environment that encourages arts and artists, encourages them to stay here, to grow their careers here, so that we have this setting where people want to come because this is a fantastic place to grow your career and a great place to live.
Denver's doing that quite well. Tell us about how Denver has integrated art into their city.
Well, it's very intentional. Over the last 20 years, they continue to grow the brand that they believe they can be the creative capital of the Rocky Mountain West. And they have a dedicated 1/10 cent tax of the sales tax that goes towards funding arts and culture and creative enterprises. And the smart thing that they do is not only invest in all of these organizations, but then every 2 years they audit the results. And what they found is that it has created jobs and cultural tourism. And now Denver is on everybody's top 10 list of great places to live. And last year, they were the leading city in the country in terms of in-migration of millennials. And those are the people that are going to grow prosperity for the future.
Who pays for this, David? So right now, who's paying for kind of arts and community here, and where's that money coming from?
Well, the TOT right now is the main funding mechanism.
Hotel tax.
The hotel tax, right. So we're about a half a cent of the 10.5 cent TOT. We both believe that should be a full cent. But I still think we can do more, and it would be wonderful if in a new administration we start to articulate how getting up to the level of Denver's funding, which is about 35 or 40 million, can really have a profound impact on the economic future of the community. So maybe we're not there yet, and people may not accept a broad-based increase in sales tax, but the history is if it's very specific and you can show results, people are willing to support it, as they have in Denver.
They see where the money is going.
Right.
DeLuke, what about the impact of arts and culture on the economy, on business, sort of in general in San Diego?
Well, we're very fortunate, again, to have an annual report that indicates all of the direct economic activity of the organizations that receive funding from the TOT. Through the city, but we also know that there are ancillary outcomes. There's the indirect funding of the tourists that come, the cultural tourists that come. But in addition, it actually makes San Diego a more attractive city to do business. And bringing in great, talented people who want to be in a place where they're going to be, as David said, alongside other really talented and creative people, whether they're in an engineering field or they're in a design field or they're in an arts and culture field, people that are engaged with the community around them find greater and greater sense of place when there's strong arts and culture. And that's what is so important. That's why we all love Balboa Park, because it represents a kind of place for everyone that lives in San Diego, and it's so full of arts and culture.
All right, DeLuke Smith and David Melmuth, we are out of time. Thank you so much for talking with us today.
Thank you, Peggy.
Thank you.
KPBS will host a live mayoral debate Monday night at 8. Join us as we discuss the issues most important to San Diego and what Carl DeMaio and Bob Filner say they'll do if elected mayor. Election 2012, the race for mayor, Monday night at 8 on KPBS TV and radio. The Old Globe's current production, Allegiance, is a musical about the internment of Japanese Americans during World War II. It stars George Takei, an actor best known as Star Trek's Mr. Sulu and as a social media superstar. But he says Allegiance is his legacy project. KPBS arts reporter Beth Accomando has the story.
Gammon is a word.
When the new musical Allegiance went into preview performances last month, it was still being tweaked, says book writer Lorenzo Tioni.
It's like archaeology. It's like a story is down there, it lies down there, and you just have to dig it up.
What I have learned in sort of unearthing the story of the internment is that a lot has gone unspoken for 70 years.
That's composer Jay Kuo.
The Japanese American culture would sooner bury the indignity and the shame than speak about it, and that was the way that things were for decades. And it wasn't until generations had passed and people began asking more questions that these stories started to come out in greater force.
Stories like those of George Takei, who was 5 when he was taken to a Japanese American internment camp.
My most vivid memory, I think, is that day when the soldiers came marching up, 2 soldiers came marching up our driveway. They had bayoneted rifles, and I remember the glinting of those bayonets. Stomped up our front porch and banged on the front door and ordered our family out.
As a composer, Kuo writes in the language of music and always saw the story as a musical.
What music does is liberate the spoken word into the emotional. And the emotions that are buried underneath the things that haven't been spoken for so long are so intense that the music allows them to come out. And so lately I've been saying, well, how could this story not be told in music?
And for Takei, it was important to look at a time when the nation faltered.
I think we learn more from those chapters than we do from the glorious chapters that we have plenty of. And the internment story is still little known and even less understood.
You know, I knew about as much about the internment as pretty much any American, which is very little.
Mark Aceto helped write the book for the play. Actress Lea Salonga says schools do little to inform students about the Japanese American internment.
There are a lot of kids that are saying, I read a lot of stuff on Facebook, and they're like, we only got 1 paragraph of this entire abominable experience to this entire community of people. 4 to 5 years of what is incarceration in an internment camp. How do you encapsulate that in a paragraph in a textbook? You can't.
Even Kuo, who was a civil rights attorney and worked on cases involving the internment, felt he could learn more.
What I hadn't experienced was sort of on a personal level, a lot of the personal stories. And so I find myself drawn in by diaries and poetry and things, art made by the internees, incredible things that needed to be given voice.
Something Takei felt was long overdue. But the tone of the play may surprise you with its humor and hope.
Yes, it was torturous and harrowing at times, but people still fell in love. They got married, had children. So there was joy. You can't survive something like that with all grim suffering.
Because the reality is there were moments of lightness and life just happening, within the confines of barbed wire fences.
It was a doom and gloom situation in which they managed to bloom where they were planted, and it's enormously inspiring.
The internment was more than just a violation of civil rights. It raised a divisive series of questions within the Japanese American community about where one's allegiance lies.
When this happens to you and your family, where does your allegiance lie? Does your allegiance, for example, lie with the country that did this to you? Do you still pledge allegiance to the United States even if your due process and equal rights have been violated?
For Takei's father, the answer was a resounding yes.
My father used to say both the strength and the weakness of our democracy is in the fact that it is a people's democracy. It can be as great as people can be, but it's as fallible as people are.
This was an event that fractured the Japanese American community 70 years ago, and it's still fractured today. I think that means to me that these wounds are not completely healed, and that all of the things that we're talking about are still relevant.
Allegiance is groundbreaking, not only for its subject matter, but also for providing Asian American actors with an opportunity to break out of stereotypes and play multidimensional roles.
Everybody of Asian descent who was doing the show, it isn't lost on any one of us how big of an opportunity and how wonderful of a chance this is to tell a story like this one.
KPBS arts reporter Beth Accomando. Allegiance runs through October 28th at the Old Globe Theater.
In tonight's Public Square, we hear from San Diegans about our investigative report on congressional candidate and Port Commissioner Scott Peters' claim that UT San Diego CEO John Lynch sent him a threatening email about building a stadium at the 10th Avenue Marine Terminal. Lynch denies he wrote the threat. Peters stands by his claim. From our KPBS website, Tony and SD wrote, "It's truly disgusting what Lynch and Manchester are trying to do. I was on the fence about Peters. Now I know who I'm voting for." And Peking Duck SD, a frequent commenter on our website, had a similar post saying he was, quote, startled as to the lengths Lynch and Manchester will go to get their way, adding, "We don't have a major newspaper anymore. It's been bought and turned into some perverse tool to use for a couple rich guys to manipulate the city." You can join in on this conversation or comment on any KPBS stories by following us on Twitter, liking us on Facebook, or email us at publicsquare@kpbs.org.
And you can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org/evening edition. Thanks for joining us. You have a great weekend.